much for having me. Just first, as a disclaimer, if my internet is a bit, has a bit of problems, I have to apologize because obviously we don't have the fastest internet in Lebanon. First, I want to thank you all so much for simply just talking about Lebanon, talking about our cause, whether it's through art or through other means. That way, we're not going to be subject to the 24-hour news cycle, and we're going to stay on people's minds, which is something that we need now more than ever. So thank you so much, all of you. The Lebanese diaspora in Mexico in particular have shown me personally amazing amounts of support, and I'm forever grateful. And to hear you talk about this warms my heart. So thank you.
Thank you, Mouin, and thanks so much for taking your time to be here. And before you continue, I think we should introduce you so people can know a little bit
Good
about
idea.
who you are. Mouin Jabber is actually a TV producer, and he turned an activist from Beirut since the last October revolution. I must personally confess that I met Mouin Jabber. I have never met him face to face, but I have followed him on Instagram since the very beginning of the revolution. And I must say that he has been a great speaker of everything of what is happening. Mouin has been in the front lines. I saw when he, when one of his friends got a shot, how he helped him. I have seen how he has kept reposting messages so people can aid, so people can support, how he has asked people to go to the protest. He has been very, very, very active in the revolution. And I think that this is something that as a diaspora or as Lebanese living in Lebanon, we appreciate so much, because as people in the diaspora, you are our eyes. You let us always see what is happening in Lebanon real time, in the moment, and something so valuable, you know, because you have broken this time and space
barrier
by allowing us to see real time exactly what is happening with your eyes. So this is something that I want to thank you a lot. And also, he has started a very nice weekly podcast. It's called Sardeh After Dinner. He does it with his partner, Medea Azouri. She's a journalist from L'Orient des Jours, which is also, she's also very good. She writes really interesting articles. And they talk about different topics, but what I like is that they talk without censorship, without a specific agenda. They talk of whatever they feel like talking, and they speak the truth. They always speak their point of view, and it's very fascinating to watch it. I will share after the links with you. So, Mouin, we have you here. I have so many questions for you, but maybe a good way of starting would be, what is it like to be in Lebanon right now, after the October Revolution, after the explosion, after everything that's happening?
Thanks for the introduction. What it's like to be in Lebanon is kind of an internal tug of war. I'm not the only one that says that. Every day you wake up and you ask yourself the question, should I stay or should I go? It's something that is on all our minds. And as you've seen, the Lebanese diaspora is huge. So a lot of people made that decision a long time ago. For me, just to let you know, since we're talking about movies, to give you an idea about how absurd living in Lebanon is, if Lebanon was a movie, between the years that took place between the years 2019 and 2020, if you sit down and watch the Lebanon movie, you would see an economic collapse, you would see a global pandemic, you would see a revolution, and you would see an explosion. And if I was watching the movie, I would actually get up and leave the theater because the plot would be so absurd. It's ridiculous. So living in Lebanon has been a mix of absurdity and, to be honest, I'm very fortunate because I was able to see the true nature of people in the face of these catastrophes. You know, when someone goes through a very difficult time, you actually see what they're capable of. So on one end, it was very humbling, and on the other, you try to fight for what is right, but the odds are very, very high, and they're really against you. And the only saving grace, if you will, the only thing that helps me get through the day is by surrounding myself with like-minded people who believe that the country needs to get better, and people that will not accept to have their fate decided by a bunch of fossilized warlords that have divided and conquered Lebanon for the longest time. So that's in a small resume of how it feels like to be in Lebanon. And again, of course, the support of the expat community on a day-to-day basis is my lifeblood, and I'm thankful for that.
Mouin, I have it's a little bit of a harsh question, but I would like to listen to your personal opinion. Why there hasn't been any drastic change in Lebanon since the October Revolution, in your opinion?
I think that's a good question. It's a question a lot of people ask themselves. Why hasn't why hasn't there been a complete change of the government? And I think it's important to note that the Lebanese revolution is not at all like the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring, in a lot of cases, you had one dictator, you had one person that you could direct all of the population sentiment against. And if you remove that person, you would, the country would kind of get better. That's what they thought. But unfortunately, what was shown in Libya and what was shown in Egypt, that a power vacuum is not always the best thing to have, especially in a place that is so divided in Lebanon. Another reason would be that you don't have one person in Lebanon, you have an entire oligarchy of warlords that have existed for a very long time and that defend each other, even though in public spaces they oust each other, they're against each other, but behind closed doors they band towards each other at any single moment they feel threatened. And you can't just remove that one day to the next. Rome wasn't built in a day. Now, Lebanon is very far from being Rome, but it's on its way, I'd like to think. And yeah, I think the change is incremental. Now, the most important change that I personally felt was the ability nowadays to speak about politics in a very free and honest way. And I think this is something that I speak with media on my podcast. We don't care anymore. We don't care about censoring ourselves. First, self-censorship was the most important power that was exerted by the political class. They would intimidate you. They would tell you that, there's the philosophy, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. They told us that there's going to be a government of national unity. It was a load of crap. It's not national unity. It just reinforced sectarian tensions, and it was not representative of the general population. So that barrier of fear is completely obliterated. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Another thing that is very important that changes the politics of Lebanon is a lot of political parties have lost their political followers. So we're on the right track.
So you were saying right now that one of the things that have changed is the censorship. Do you think it has to do with the role of social media? What I mean is, do you think we could, they would censor us if we didn't have social media, or it's thanks to social media that they are not censoring you?
I think it's, what social media was able to bring is an entire democratization of the information arena. We see that everywhere, not just in Lebanon. We see that after people witnessed the death of George Floyd by someone kneeling on him for more than 8 minutes and suffocating him. We see that in the death of Giovanni Lopez, where people went up in arms and were able to document exactly what was happening on the street, even though a lot of media outlets were trying to hide it. And so because of this democratization of information, now you don't have any more gatekeepers. Before, traditional media outlets were the gatekeepers, and if you wanted to reach a mass audience, if you wanted to be able to talk to people, you had to bend over backwards, you had to compromise your ideologies, you had to basically change who you were in order to be able to speak your message. At some point, these gatekeepers were like the bouncers that would decide whether you could be let in or be let out. You know, bouncers would let you in if you were wearing something nice, and they would kick you out if you weren't wearing the dress code. The same thing with ideologies. If you had the same ideology, they would let you in. And now these bouncers are simply doormen. They don't have any more power whatsoever. The sovereignty of information right now is led by people that are on the ground that actually showcase what is happening.
Hello,
and the traditional media outlets have to follow them.
Or it was just me?
Oh, sorry. Did you guys lose signal?
No.
No.
I think so.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So, so this democratization kind of changed the landscape. Now, these politicians, although they're very stupid, they're also in some cases smart. They also leverage social media in very evil ways, and I say evil not in a cartoonish way. I really think that these people are very evil. They employ a lot of intimidation tactics to be able to silence people. Before, you would silence people by not giving them access, and now you silence them using electronic armies. I myself have been verbally assaulted several times online by these electronic armies. The Arabic language is very creative with it when it comes to insults, so I had a lot of fun reading the insults. I was also insulted, or sorry, they tried to silence me through physical intimidation and through phone calls. You know, they would insult me because, just to give you an example, I myself am a Muslim Shia, and based on the conversation that you guys had today, you knew that Lebanon is an entire confessionalist system that is, you know, divided, or the power is divided based on confession. And unfortunately, the majority of Hezbollah and the majority of Harakat Amal are Muslim Shia. And because of these traditional media outlets, they were able to control the narrative when it came to what a Muslim Shia is and what allegiances they have. And for the longest time, they had to continuously tell people that all the Muslim Shias are linked to Iran. The Muslim Shias are the protectors of Iran, and they're basically the bodyguards of the corridor from Buwaybat Fatima to Tehran. And so when I would speak a different narrative, one that is more of tolerance and one that puts Lebanon first and not Iran, I was repeatedly abused and repeatedly, insulted because I strayed away from the narrative. I think that's a very important thing to realize. It was very fun. But, you know, if I may say something, I can talk about myself all you want. There's something that happened recently which kind of changed the political landscape in Lebanon yesterday, actually. It was the students, and I'm sure we have a lot of students here. The students in Lebanon, for the first time in the history of all universities, were able to nominate independent candidates to the Student Representative Council. And all of these candidates, all of these independent candidates won by a landslide, won by so many votes in an arena that is usually dominated by the political parties. So for the first time ever, this was the change that we wanted to see. What I love about students is, you mentioned that I was on a frontliner. I helped my friend after he got shot. And this is actually the shield over there. I think there's still a bit of blood on it. And the flag behind me still smells like tear gas. But that's not important, because the real frontliners are the students themselves. They are a symptom, or they are the overwhelming threat to the political establishment, because they have nothing to lose. You know, they just have their ideals. They're not going to get threatened easily. They are just advocating, and their most powerful weapon is their idea. And you can't bomb an idea. You can't shoot an idea. If anything, you strengthen it even more. So they are the real barometer of success when it comes to an actual revolution. I think that answers the previous question. Why hasn't there been a complete change? Change is incremental, and we have to stay always very patient and realize that Rome wasn't built in one day. I hope that answers the question.
That's marvelous. First of all, as a digital activist, you have a very big responsibility of sharing news, sharing events. How do you, first of all, how do you filter your information? How do you know which information might be right, which information might be fake news? And also, do you think that this is also related to a question the public made us? Do you think the easy access to social media and the easy news allows the spread of fake news and rumors at any moment?
Absolutely. I think right now, you know, being critical is the most important thing. I personally am not a journalist. I haven't studied it. So what I have to do is do a lot of research before I post something. And I'm forgiven at some point if I do make a mistake, and I have, because like I said, a lot of misinformation is flooded. That is one of the tactics to be able to seize the narrative. If they can't seize it, they just flood it with complete and utter crap in order to change it. And I think the most important thing to do is to just be accountable and say that, listen, I screwed up, guys. I thought this information was valid. It wasn't. You don't have that with usually traditional media outlets. You know, they just stick to their narrative, and whoever disagrees with them can, you know, go to hell. So you have to cross-reference it. You have to. I have a lot of sources and a lot of political analysts that are my friends that understand politics a lot more than I do. So whenever I'm in doubt, I just ask them, and they kind of corroborate or refute whatever statement I have.
And this leads me to another question. Many people say that digital activism is actually like not so good, because many people might feel that by just retweeting something, or with clicktivism or with slacktivism, they're already doing something for the revolution, when in reality we need something more political actions that go more further away than social media, right? So
Absolutely.
how do you think that digital activism, in your personal experience, has influenced in the offline world? Do you have any anecdote or experience? Or
Yeah, I think, you know, they're both interrelated. So activism has to translate to some sort of thing that takes place on the ground. You know, they have a symbiotic relationship. One sometimes can't exist without the other, at least in terms of longevity. You know, you have to talk the talk, but you also have to walk the walk. Now, at the beginning of the revolution, a lot of focus was towards, you know, going down to the street, showcasing your frustration against the establishment, using the slogan "كلٌ يعني كلٌ," which means all. But right now, after a year, and you know, we're just 2 weeks away from, or a week away from the anniversary of the revolution, the slogan "كلٌ يعني كلٌ" is a bit short-sighted. It has been romanticized a lot, but it is not, you know, it's just a nice poster that you can keep in your room. It's not deep enough. So presence online is one thing, but and the more important thing now is the revolution has kind of changed faces. It's not just about keeping pressure. It's about talking. It's about coming up with new policies. It's about providing a alternative to the oligarchy that was put in place. You know, it's also important to control your narrative on how you speak with the other. You know, people that are partisans, people that are part of other political parties in Lebanon, it's very special because they're kind of hostages. You know, can you imagine after the 4th of August, after the economic collapse and after the revolution, that people are still kind of entrenched with their political parties? And it's because of the history of sectarian divide that has plagued the nation that still affects people on a PTSD level. The media, obviously, the traditional media hasn't helped. And the narrative that you have to have on social media that translates to meetings and what have you is a narrative that should create a welcoming environment to anyone to have a conversation with them. You know, the worst thing that you can do is to treat someone from a different political party as an idiot or as a sheep or as a derogatory term, because that won't get us anywhere. We have to, like I said, the partisans of these political parties are you know, they're losing, you know, their faith in their political establishment, but they have nowhere to go. So you have to provide an alternative platform, and the only way you can do that is not just by going down on the streets, it's by creating political manifestos, policies, conversations. I remember when I went down to the street, I spoke to a member of Hezbollah, or I spoke to someone that had allegiances with Hezbollah. And the media portrays them as people that are, they have beards, they're very scary, they're huge, they have AK-47s all around them. That's not the case. These people that are allied with Hezbollah usually have a lot of traumatic experiences associated to the Israeli occupation, that have had their houses destroyed because of the Israeli occupation, that have lost members of their family, that have shuhada, that have martyrs. And to a certain extent, because the Lebanese army was not able to fulfill their role to defend the borders, Hezbollah took it. Hezbollah was able to provide the alternative that we were just talking about, to provide a certain level of safety for them. And this person would be with you on 99.9% of the cause's goals. But when it comes to Hezbollah, or when it comes to the concept of the muqawamah, so the resistance, you can't just attack the resistance. At some point during the October 17 revolution, they tried to, basically put the revolutionaries as the head of the spear to start tackling all the problems that Lebanon has. They would ask me, so what do you think about the disarmament of Hezbollah? What do you think about the confessionalist system? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And these problems are problems that have plagued Lebanon for a very long time. So you can't just ask the revolution to solve all of them. What we want to do is to start a dialogue. We can't demonize everybody. We have to be, we have to have open arms, and we have to be very logical that not everyone is going to go 180 and join the revolution. These people, if they were to join the revolution, let's not forget that they come from an environment that is very much indoctrinated. Their parents might be politicized, their friends might be politicized. So if they leave that political party, they will be ostracized, or they will be marginalized by their society. So it's not very easy, is it? You have to encourage them to talk. And I think that's the most important thing. So policy making, provision of the alternative, not just going down on the streets and shouting Kilon Yani Kilon, is the right way to go.
Oh, yes, that's super interesting. This leads me, well, you have a nice comment here. Someone says, great talk, Mouin. This is a speech we need to spread among.
Thank you, Sam Lahoud.
That's really nice. And Mouin, one of the things that I have found really interesting in this revolution is that there are no leaders as such. And it's something that has been very well said, that the revolution is leaderless. However, there was a very nice book they published, I think last year. It was called The Silent Leaders. And it spoke about the artists, the activists and stuff. So tell me, first of all, do you think, what is your opinion on this leaderless
revolution movement?
Do you think it's something positive, or it's something that we should be looking for, a leader that can lead this? And
I think, yeah.
No, please.
I think, that's a very, very valid question. You do need a leader to a certain extent, but in my opinion, what you have to look at, you have to look back at history. You have to look back at the leaders of the opposition in Lebanon. And we have a very bloody history when it comes to any form of opposition. We either have anyone that provided some sort of dissent against this oligarchy, that these criminals that are in power, anyone that said anything would either be intimidated, silenced, exiled, or even killed. A symptom of that would be the 2005 assassinations. They killed every single person that had a word against the opposition. And make no mistake, the people that were killed are the people that had the respect and admiration of the youth, because these are the most powerful people. Again, I can't stress enough how important the students are. I can't stress enough how the younger generation is important. So with that history, with that bloody history that we have, I think leaders coming up right now would be kind of providing these political parties that still have some sort of influence and power with the leaders' heads on a silver platter and telling them, listen, guys, here you go, here are the leaders, do about what you want to do with them. So I think it's a very dangerous thing to do. Now, does that mean that you don't have leaders? No, that it does not. It means that they're working in the shadows, and they're working on policy, they're working on alternative platforms. And when the elections come, which is a year and a half, I think, down the line, that is when you will see these huge campaigns that are going to promote change and encourage people to vote. But I think right now it's a bit premature to come up with leaders. You see a few of them, you know, some people, you know, when I say a leader, for me, a leader is someone that just writes a tweet. You know, in the end, you can get jailed for a tweet in Lebanon. Someone who voices their dissent, and a leader is someone that is empathetic, that gains the love of the Lebanese population, hopefully makes it to office, something that we lack.
Do you consider yourself a leader in this room?
No. No, I think leaders can be only elected democratically. Anyone who thinks that they're a leader is full of crap. Until you have the actual consent of the population that you are a leader, you're nothing but someone that has a very loud voice. And does that mean that I don't have a responsibility? Yes, of course I do. I have a responsibility because, you know, not towards just the expats, but towards the Lebanese people, to be someone that puts Lebanon first and foremost and just breaks through that whole sectarian bullshit, that has plagued our country. I'm not, my father is Shia, my mother is Sunni, my grandmother is Christian. I'm everything, and I don't align, you know, or none of them are a priority. My priority is my flag right behind me. My priority is the people that I see with me on the streets every single day. So my responsibility is just to Lebanon. And then, you know, if someone wants to call me leader, they can, but I would actually ask them to just go to the voting booth and elect the people that call themselves leaders, and hopefully they get elected.
I have a question from someone in the public. I'll try to translate it because they wrote it in Spanish. So first of all, Mouin, thank you so much for your reflections. My question is the traditional activism, meaning militancia, what is militancia?
Being a militant, like a militia?
Yeah, being part of the militia makes you tired and it drains your energy and your forces. How do you live this disenchantment or this tiredness in the digital activism?
That's a very good question. A lot of yoga. No, I'm kidding. I personally, I'm just going to use the example of the 4th of August, the explosion that decimated half the city's capital. I found myself one of the first responders there. I have a background in first aid. I was in the Red Cross for a very long time, so I felt like I could help. And when I went there, and the days that followed, we co-founded an organization called Base Camp, where we provided food, where we provided water, shelter, mental health. Basically, a lot of NGOs came together and created this base camp in the middle of Mar Mikhail, which is one of the areas that were affected most. I'm going to be very honest, I couldn't have gotten through what I saw if it wasn't for the people that I was surrounded by. These people were my strength. These people are the ones that kept me going. You know, the same way you have Alcoholics Anonymous meetings where people that share the same pain sit down together and talk about their experiences. I think when I spent it with people that were not only traumatized, but were also being part of the solution, I think that was that was the saving grace for me. It wasn't only it was only after I left base camp, because in the end, like you said, I'm a producer, so I had to start working. It was only when I left that, you know, inviting environment that I kind of found myself on a very emotional level. And there's nothing wrong with being emotional in these cases. What we've seen and what we've gone through is, you know, even in movies, it can be considered as absurd. So that's what helped me. That's what helped me go through my disenchantment. But I chose not to be cynical. You know, they say in every cynic there's a disappointed idealist, and if people have gone through what they did in Lebanon, you would expect a lot of people being cynical, dismissing any sort of aid, dismissing any sort of effort that would basically make the country a better place, because, you know, they have every right to think so. But because I'm with young people that do not have the PTSD of war, that don't have to know war to realize that something needs to change in the country. That's the only way moving forward.
That is one of the reflections I have had lately. Like, do we need a bloody revolution to have change, or can we actually change things in a peaceful way, especially in Lebanon, no? Which I think it's the first time maybe in history where people all agree, Lebanese, Maronite, Christian, Druze, Muslims, Shia, they all agree that they don't want any person lost anymore. They don't want more blood.
Yeah.
Children
anymore. You know, just to add to just the previous question, I'm sure we have a lot of expats that are Lebanese listening to us. It's also important to realize that the expat pain that was felt is also something that is very difficult, because it's one thing to be in the thick of it. It's one thing to witness the explosion. It's another thing to be an expat, be in a different country, see the catastrophe that is happening, and be in a totally alien environment and be surrounded by a lot of people that sometimes might not even understand what you're going through, and might even dismiss it as something, oh, you know, Lebanon, there's always bombs, what are you so worried about? So I just wanted to add to that small asterisk. When it comes to, sorry, go ahead.
It was really interesting, because adding to your comment on the expats, it was very interesting to see what you posted on Instagram. They replied it, like they copied on other parts of the world. So this is something that really amazes me, like the transnational activism that has happened in other parts of the world thanks to your digital activism. For example, I remember that once after the explosion, I saw on Gino Reidy's account a video of the orca. Oh, how do you say orca? The hang.
The noose. Yeah.
Yeah, the loose. And it was fascinating to see how they replied it in Amsterdam, and how they went to a park and they did exactly the same thing. So
I love it. I love it.
What has the answer for you from expats and transnationals, activists, for you?
Yeah, how have they supported me? You know, to be honest, they've supported in just crazy ways. We're talking about sending planes filled with supplies after the explosion. From that to just a small word saying, yo, Mouin, you know, we're with you. The support has taken many shapes and sizes, because in the end, we're all Lebanese and we all feel the pain, and no pain is more important than the other. You know, you shouldn't tell yourself, oh, you know, I'm feeling down, but a lot of people have it worse. No, that's not the case. If you feel pain, it is perfectly legitimate, and you shouldn't dismiss it. You should actually embrace it and recognize it. So the support of the expat community has been fantastic. Regarding the violence, the tusaid, we call it tusaid in Lebanon, like to escalate the level of violence. I personally am against violence, although I'm talking to you guys with a gas mask behind me and a shield with blood on it. But the important thing is it's a shield, it's not a gun. The thing is, these people that are in power, these oligarchs, these dictators, have been dealing with death for the last 30 years. These people have used death as a tool for them. So whenever you escalate, whenever you start using guns and firepower against them, you are in their court. You are in their playing field. They have been doing this for 30 bloody years. So they will take advantage of it, and you will give them carte blanche to literally shower you with bullets whenever they see that. So we shouldn't give them an excuse If anything, this would delegitimize us. What drove them crazy is the concept of a peaceful revolution. They're like, these people only deal with violence and death. So when someone comes and says "silmiye, silmiye" in front of what I was on the front line more often than I should be, and I would say "silmiye, silmiye" to the internal security forces, and this guy would be completely decked out with a mask, with a baton, with bullets everywhere, and wouldn't know what to do. So it's important to kind of keep our cool and to realize that we shouldn't give them an excuse to kill us. We should maintain our cool, even though I have to say it's very difficult to do it sometimes. Sometimes you want to beat the shit out of someone, but you were directing our aggression towards. Sorry that I can't say that word. Maybe you have students here, but yeah.
No, don't worry. You reminded me in one of your podcasts, or you were talking about digital shaming on politicians and their children.
Yeah.
And you were asking people if they considered that digital shaming is right, and if also we should shame not only politicians but their families and their children, and and this is something that I have seen a lot lately in social media. So
I think that's a great question. I'm all for political shaming members of the establishment, because these people are representative of the people. These people are public figures, and they are subject to scrutiny regardless. They work for us. They call civil servants for a bloody reason. When it comes to shaming their families, to be fair, I'm against shaming minors. I'm against cyberbullying. But there's something that is happening in Lebanon, which is very interesting, where you see politicians and their families partying and having a blast only a few days after the explosion that rocked Beirut. And that kind of apathy and carelessness and complete disregard for human life and for the mourning of an entire city is insulting to many. You can shame them as long as they're not minors, but it's a tool of intimidation. I used to have a lot of friends of mine that were sons of politicians. I used to talk to them regularly. The phone calls obviously stopped coming because I was very adamant about the revolution, and now they're scared. They're scared to death about going in any public place because they know that they're illegitimate. Their presence is illegitimate. Their very existence on the streets is illegitimate, and it's one of the tools. It's one of the tools. I am not going to say that I'm nobody to tell people what to do. Or what I can do is just to redirect this aggression into something that is more productive than shaming, something that will actually, delegitimize them in a different way, let's say.
Okay. Well, I think this has been a very interesting and enriching conversation, Mouin. Is there something you would like to add about your work, about your experiences?
Absolutely. I just want to first say thank you for this, and I can't stress the importance of the students that are I think the most important aspect of any revolution. They are the pulse of any change, because it's the students and it's the youth that have the power in their own hands. They are the largest adversary against the political establishment because they have time on their hands. They have their thoughts and their willpower as their only arm, and they can be intimidated easily. What's also important to note is, although people can be intimidated, people can be attacked and violently, just harassed. When that happens, just know that you're on the right track, and know that when people get, when people lose their cool, that's when you know that you're winning. And the only argument the only retaliation to an argument is a better, more articulate argument. It's important to always keep in mind that we have to create an environment that is hospitable, that opens all different thoughts. I went down to the revolution for different reasons than someone who went down for, water or food. And you have to realize this. You have to realize that the revolution has many faces and many different agendas. you also have to realize that this revolution is not just against the establishment, but it's also a mental revolution. It's an intellectual one. That is the most important takeaway. And that intellectual revolution means that you have to speak to every single person that is either part of a political party or has a past with them, because that is the only way you can actually enact change. It's if you remove these people to be part of the equation, if you remove anyone that has a political past, you are engaging in the same bipartisan dynamic that any other political establishment used to do. No, you have to create a round table of discussion. You have to embrace them and just try to form a better country.